I said, well, yesterday actually, June 1st is the start of Pride Month, and we celebrate Pride here at Unity of Springfield. So what is Pride? Gay Pride, or LGBTQIA plus Pride, is the promotion of the self-affirmation, dignity, equality, and increased visibility of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people as a social group. Pride, as opposed to shame and social stigma, is the predominant outlook that bolsters most LGBTQIA plus rights movements. Now, I want to say, and I've said this many times before, to all, and I'm going to now just call to all of our queer community, that there is nothing wrong with you. You are not a sinner. Amen, huh? You were not born a mistake. Oh my goodness, to even think the arrogance, I think sometimes, to think that this intelligence that created everything, oops, made a mistake with you guys. Sorry, you're not a mistake. You are created in the image and after the likeness of God, just like everyone else is. You were born into original blessing, and you know what? This God that we call God, that is love, loves you just the way that you are. Why? Because God is love. And you can never be outside that realm of love. And the only place that you are going after you transition from your physical body is into that realm of pure love, because there is only one presence and one power. Yes, thank you, Kat. Yes, yes. You deserve the same opportunities for a happy, peace-filled, love-filled, joy-filled, prosperity-filled life as everyone else. In fact, you know what? Our Declaration of Independence, this is what it says. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, human beings, are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness should be equitable goals. These are goals in which every single one of us has the same opportunity to have the freedom to create the life of our heart's desire in our individual pursuit of happiness. In other words, no matter what my ethnicity, my socioeconomic level, my education level, my gender, my sexual orientation, no matter what any of that is, just by virtue of the fact that I am endowed with the same unalienable rights as everyone else. And we need to speak this message loud and clear more often, right? Yes, the unalienable means that which cannot be taken away. And as the Declaration of Independence says, we are all created equal, but they forgot, didn't they? Right? Yeah. So the purpose of my talk today, I'm going to shed light on a few scriptures that are used, especially by fundamental Christianity, to take away the rights, the dignity, and many, many, many times, my friends, unfortunately, the lives of our queer community of people. And I want to show that there is absolutely no merit in these scriptures for calling homosexuality a sin, and to take a stand that this can no longer be tolerated, and here's why. The Trevor Project states that suicide, this just floors me, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 10 to 14. 10 to 14. And the third leading cause of young people 15 to 24 years old. That our queer young people are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide in their lives. And it's estimated that more than 1.8 million LGBTQIA plus young people ages 13 to 24 seriously consider suicide each year, and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. Think about that, every 45 seconds. The 2023 U.S. National Survey on Mental Health found that 41% of LGBTQIA plus young people seriously considered attempting suicide last year, including half of those being transgender and non-binary youth. And here's the thing, is that many people believe that the Bible justifies their hatred and violence against our queer community. Betty Green, in her book, The Drowning of Stephen Jones, this floored me, interviewed 400 men who were in prison for beating gay people to death, and not one of them was repentant because they believed that the Bible told them to do that. This is an atrocity. This is an absolute atrocity. I'm all about honoring different paths, but I will not honor those teachings because they have, yes, thank you, because they have caused so much damage in our world, so much hate, so much division. And I will stand up and I will voice that atrocity. And I will take a stand anyway. So in a book called What the Bible Really Says About Homosexuality, it says that people oppose and abuse homosexual men and women for being different, odd, strange, or as they say, queer. Lesbian women and gay men are just not allowed to fit in. They are made to be outsiders, foreigners in our society. They are disowned by their families, separated from their children, fired from their jobs, evicted from apartments and neighborhoods, insulted by public figures, denounced from the pulpit, vilified on religious radio and TV, and then beaten in schools and killed on the streets and in the backwoods of our nation. All of this is done in the name of religion and supposed Judeo-Christian morality. This is not the message of Jesus. Do you know what Jesus said about homosexuality? Nothing. Isn't that interesting? You know, he said, I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And I'm going to talk about some of these interesting laws. But he showed us that there is no separation, that we're all beloved children of God. He went around constantly, you know, bringing those who were on the outskirts in and saying, you matter, you're enough, you know, you deserve every bit as much as everyone else does. So, and recognize that the two scriptures that I'm going to talk about today, these were written between 4,500 and 7,000 years ago. It's like, oh, how far have we come in that time? Let's see. So I'm going to first go to Leviticus, and Leviticus is like the book of law. And so I want to give you some historical context here. The condemnation of homogenital acts occurs in a section of Leviticus called the Holiness Code or the Purity Code. And this list is like a list of laws and punishments that spells out the requirements for Israel to remain holy in God's sight. Why? Because the Jews believe and still believe that Israel was God's chosen people. And so Israel had a covenant with God, and this covenant required that they show themselves differently than everybody else. This is why it's the Holiness Code, the Purity Code, because they were God's people. They needed to maintain their own traditions. They were not to do things the way other religions did, and certainly they needed to set themselves apart from the Gentiles. So it's very interesting, like I said, when you go to read Leviticus. Leviticus was written as a code for the Israelites, and a lot of it was written as a code for the priests. So Leviticus 18 talks about sexual relations and unlawful. These are actually unlawful sexual relations. So here's like some of what's in Leviticus. It just, I don't know, to me this was, so much of it was common sense, but no one is to approach anyone, any close relative, to have sexual relations. I'm just going to say relations from now on. So don't dishonor your father by having relations with your mother. We had to write a law? Really? Don't have relations with your father's wife. Don't have relations with your sister, or with your son's daughter, or your daughter's daughter, or with the daughter of your father's wife, or with your father's sister, or your mother's sister, which would be your aunt, with your daughter-in-law, with both a woman and her daughter, with your neighbor's wife. Here, this is interesting because this just pops in there. Do not, so you guys, if you have children, do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech. I was in there. I thought that was interesting. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. Do not have relations with an animal. Everyone who does any of these detestable things, they will be cut off from their people. So recognize that these acts are not about love. These acts are what? About lust, and many times about violence and perversion and rape. But let's talk for a moment, because the one that we want to focus on is what about the male to male? So some of what I'm going to share with you today comes from Reverend Will Bowen. But first of all, let's go back. Two things. One is that it was, looked upon as a really awful thing if a man was to be looked at with any effeminate qualities. And so the raping of men, which is what happened over and over again, was for the purpose of emasculating them. And it gave power to the abusers to do that. But here's another thing, is not only that, it was a waste of seed. So ancient Israelites, in case you didn't know, didn't believe in heaven or hell. They believed in a place called Sheol. And they believed that this place called Sheol is in the center of the earth, and it's very dark, and that's where everyone goes when they die. The only way to go to a lesser place of Sheol was based on the number of offspring that a man had. Now, for women, we were just going to be in the darkest place, period. And especially, it wasn't just the offspring, but the amount of males that a man had. If a man died without having children, his widow was to go to his brothers so that she could have male offspring, so he could have a higher place in this dark place in the center of the earth. And the ancients believed that the males were the only ones who had anything to do with procreation. That, women were just here to house it, but we have nothing to do with it. And they also, here's the thing, they also believed that males had a limited procreation abilities. So imagine if you believed that the number of male children determined where you would be when you went for all eternity after you died, and you had limited procreation abilities, you wouldn't want to waste your seed on anything other than the possibility of creating a child, a male child. And that can only be done with what? A female, right? Homosexual sex is forbidden to keep Israel distinct from the Gentiles, but also to make sure that their men could be higher in this place called Sheol. By the word, just in case you didn't know, the word homosexual actually didn't appear in the Bible until 1946. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, isn't that interesting? And as I said, Jesus never said one word about it. And I think it's important that we have that historical context, that we can look at the bigger picture with that to see that it is not a sin. It is not a sin. It was all had to do with this purity code, and it was for the Jews, and it was for the priests. Now, let's look, how about in Genesis at the quote-unquote sin of Sodom. This is another big one that is used over and over again to say that homosexuality is wrong. So in this story, two angels come to the edge of the city, and Lot is sitting at the gateway of the city. And Lot sees these two angels, they're men, and he invites them to come and stay with him in his home. And at first the angels are like, no, we'll go and we'll stay on the square. And he insists, no, you need to come to my home. So they go to his home. He fixes them dinner. He treats them really good. But before they had all gone to bed, the story says that all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so we can have our way with them. Okay? Got that part so far? Because the rest of the story just shocks the crap out of me. I shouldn't have said that, should I? It just shocks the lot out of me. I could have said a different word, but I didn't. Lot went outside to meet them, and he shut the door behind him, and he said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Here's what I'll do. I have two virgin daughters who have never been with men. I will give my daughters to you, and you can do whatever you want with them. What? What? But don't do anything to these men, for they're under my protection, under my roof. I want to be like, well, what about your daughters? But again, women were possessions, and daughters were the lowest of the low on that scale. And they were like, get out of our way. These people came here, and so we want these men to come out. And so they started to pull on Lot, but the two men in the house pulled Lot back in and shut the door. And then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door. First of all, are you kidding me that he offered his two virgin daughters to all the men in the neighborhood to have their way with them? Why? Again, it was because they were women. And here's the thing is that he was actually giving up some financial resources, because by not selling, but when they got married, then the men would pay a dowry for them. But the sacred code of the land is that you took care of strangers. That was the sacred code. Lot refused to expose his guests to the men of Sodom, to the abuse of that, because to do so would have been to violate that sacred law. That is how distorted these laws were and are, but were back then. Because to offer his virgin daughters didn't go against any sacred code. Oh my gosh. And so the author of this story makes it clear that it was irrelevant whether the sex was going to be hetero or homosexual. In the place of the males, he offered his daughters. But the point is that the sin of Sodom, it was about abuse and offense against strangers, insult to the traveler, inhospitality to the needy. It was not because homosexuality is a sin. That is not what that scripture is about. And it's used for that. So it's important, and there are numerous other scriptures that are used that I don't have time to go into today, but those are the two main ones that we hear all the time. And as we can see, neither of those scriptures are relevant to what it is being used for. Now, I want to say that here in our spiritual community, we have an array of people, right, with all kinds of opinions. Yes? So we have people who maybe don't think that we're quite inclusive enough, and we have people who believe that maybe we talk about this too much. And I listen because I want to hear and I want to honor, and I try to be in that space where we can be honoring to everyone here. But here's what I know. We have a significant amount of people in our spiritual community that are in the LGBTQIA+ community. And when I talk to the people that are in our queer community, and I know that can be an offensive word to many people, because many of us were brought up differently with that word, but that is an affirming and inclusive word that is used now. They're here because they want to have a spiritual journey, and they feel safe here. They know that here, hopefully, and I don't even want to say we all know that we are all here to be authentically who we came here to be, right? That's in our mission statement. And so the goal here is not to focus solely on LGBTQIA+ issues. And what I do know is that our queer community still faces incredible discrimination, bullying, and violence. Again, that's absolutely unacceptable. As a heterosexual woman, I don't think twice about taking my husband's hand in public, or even here, or putting his arm around me. But in our queer community, they do. As a heterosexual woman, I don't ever think someone is going to say something awful to me because I am a heterosexual. But in our queer community, they face that all the time, right? I mean, you never know. And I talk to my friends and my spiritual family who are in the queer community, and it's just crazy to me the lack of freedom that they have to be themselves wherever they go, out of fear of how people are going to react to them, and not just react to them, but also, again, violence ensues in that. Mary gave me this quote. We don't know who the author is, but it says, queer people don't grow up as ourselves. We grow up playing a version of ourselves that sacrifices authenticity to minimize humiliation and prejudice. The massive task of adult lives is to unpick which parts of ourselves are truly us. And that is so true. You know, you think about from the time that somebody recognizes that they're different as a child, but they're being told that how they're feeling different is wrong and it's a sin, it's hiding. It's pushing down. It's not being able to be authentically who you are. And it is time for our culture to mature and to recognize the sacred worth of every human being. So I want to talk for a couple minutes about honoring pronouns. Now, James will be doing a class on this at some point, and I encourage you to think about taking that class. So this is a rhetorical question. I'm not asking you to raise your hand, but how many of us feel overwhelmed with the use of pronouns? It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And Paul and I talked about this the other day, and we said to us it's like a foreign language, something that we, have to learn. And I love this post. It says, a friendly reminder that you don't need to fully understand the nuances of gender identity to know that each individual person knows who they are better than you ever will. So if someone is in a female body and they go by he or him or his or they or them or she or her, it is not right to minimize their request of who they know that they are inside just because you don't understand it or don't agree with it or are uncomfortable with it. Right? Yes. And so I want to share this with you. While biological sex is defined by the physical characteristics observed at birth, such as chromosomes, hormones, and genitalia, gender identity is an entirely different concept. Gender identity refers to how individuals perceive themselves and identify internally, which can be the same as or different from the sex they were assigned at birth. This self-perception is a core aspect of an individual's identity and deeply personal. James had pointed me to an article on the Folks with Faith website, FOLX, with faith, and I encourage you to go check it out. We are a part of that community now, and it talks about all the chromosomal variations that people are born with. And just, so there's the gay and the lesbian, but then there's all these other letters that represent variations in how people feel inside. And as I read this article, my eyes were open and my heart just felt saddened for this whole group of people that have been dismissed because of who they know themselves to be inside. That, I may be in a female body, but I know inside that I'm not just female. I'm more than that. And so my point here is that we don't know what's going on inside someone else, but they know who they are. And who are we to disrespect and dishonor who they know themselves to be? Right? So please listen when somebody tells you who they are and do your best. Here's what I always say, when we know better, and I know the saying is when we know better, we do better, but when we know better, we have the opportunity to do better, because we don't always do better, do we? But we have the opportunity to do better. And as you and I start standing up and we start choosing to be present to everyone and honor everyone's sacred worth, knowing that just by calling someone by the pronoun, and here's the thing, because we no longer say preferred pronoun. You know why? Because it makes it sound again like they're just like, okay, today I'm going to show up as this. No, this is who they are. Amen. Thank you. This is who they are. So we honor who they know themselves to be, because we care, right? Because we care. So, Springfield's Pride is coming this Saturday. Woo! If you've never been downtown for Pride, I just want to encourage you to go. It's such a fun day, a fun event, and Unity of Springfield is going to be there. Bobby is heading this, right? Bobby, he's back there. He's got his arm up. He's going to be out at the table. And I encourage you to sign up for places that you can be a service during this event. We have things going on all day. And this is all going to be talked about in announcements, but one of the things is, and it used to be called Faithful Allies, but sometimes we have some people come that, like to spread these negative things about the, how bad homosexuality is, and it's a sin. So there's also an opportunity for you, if you would like to be on call, to take some signs. If people are there, we're going to take signs in front of them, and we're going to sing and dance and just kind of, divert the attention away from that. So in closing, and I had no idea how I was going to close today, but I do just want to say to our queer community that we see you, and we love you. And we want you to feel safe, and we want you to feel affirmed here. I promise you, we are doing the best that we can, and we are open to doing better. So please give us grace as we're navigating all of this, because a lot of this is new to us, but we want to do better. And so we love you, and we honor you, and we behold the beautiful light of God that each and every one of you are. Namaste.